Welcome to the 13th annual Bushwick Film Festival. This is the first ever virtual movie industry conference that we have organized. We have Broadway Stage in Heart City presenting our amazing virtual panel. And I would strongly recommend our viewers who are joining us right now to use the chat option to your advantage. Drop your LinkedIn profile or your virtual business cards, make those connections, build those networks. Who knows, you may find your next co-creator or the crew member down there. Also use the Q&A tab, highly recommend you, so we can keep track of all the questions. We have an amazing lineup of conversations today, and I am just so excited to get started. So who's ready to meet the producers?
Me.
I
am.
So our Meet the Producers, we have with us Denise Davis, COO of Color Creative Producer Insecure. Kay Rothman, PGA East Chair, Merida Producer, Silver EK Productions. We have Ahmed Musiol, Co-Founder, President Wayfarer. And we have Sam Fader with us, Director, Co-Producer of Disclosure. The panel will be moderated with our amazing Dana Kuznetskov, who is a producer herself. I will let you take it off, Dana. Have fun, guys.
Thank you. Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Sunday morning conversation. As Samaya said, use that chat box. Let us know where you're from. Let us know where you're listening from. Just say, hey from, I'm sitting in the Bronx right now, so hey all from the Bronx. And I do have to say thank you to the Bushwick Film Festival, because this has been an amazing, and just the whole program was phenomenal. So well done, such great speakers. So well done, Kwebe, well done, Samaya, well done, Tyrone, well done, Kevin. Nice. And what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to do bios. You guys see everybody's name. You know they're all incredibly accomplished producers. So in the interest of saving time and hearing more from them than from me, just look them up. You all know how to do this. And trust me, this is a really good group. It's a perfect mix of fiction and nonfiction storytellers, and we're going to get to hear a little bit from all of them. As you know, we have 45 minutes to meet the producers, so we're going to get started. If you think of a question that you want to ask any of these accomplished panelists, please throw it in the Q&A box as you think of it, and we'll try to get to all of them. If you don't want your name mentioned, just put that on the top of the question that you don't want your name mentioned. So let's get started. The best way for us to get to know everybody, now it's 2020, right? So every session, every panel, every event is always opening up with words acknowledging just the devastation, the confusion, just the year that 2020 has been, the tragedy and the traumatic 2020 that we're all living. But we're gonna do something a little different because it is Bushwick and it's the Bushwick Film Festival. So instead of going into a great speech about the year that we're living in, I'm going to ask these fabulous panelists, these fabulous producers, to give me one word, and that's one word only. And you guys listening, please feel free to throw in the chat box your one word. But if I can get one word from each of you to tell me producing in 2020, just describe to me producing. It's not easy because it is 2020. So give me your one word that will describe producing in 2020. And just because I dropped my list, how about Denise? Why don't we start with you? One word, producing 2020.
Well, this is hard. Good morning, everybody. No, it's fine. I'll say the first word that came to mind, right? Which is challenging, to be honest. That's the first thing that came to mind. I would just highlight and say it's not super challenging, but it's been challenging.
Yeah, Sam.
Relentless.
Excellent. Ahmed.
I would say growth.
And Kay.
Opportunity.
Wow, excellent. And we'll get to some of
But you know I had 7 words.
Yes,
right?
I know. You're lucky I didn't say one syllable. That's okay. So let me ask each of you, because this is what everybody really wants to start off with and wants to hear. You each have a very different sensibility around producing. You represent different genres, and you have very, very different styles. So let's start with telling us how you got your foot in the door. How did you get through that door? What was the process that you took to get into the entertainment industry? And as important, how did you stay there? So Ahmed, why don't we start with you?
Ooh, okay.
Everybody's going to be on the hot seat. It's all good.
So I guess I would say my path into the industry wasn't necessarily traditional, and yet at the same time, I think that's pretty much the truth of everybody's path into the industry. My family in Egypt has been in the film industry since the 50s or 60s. And then there was a large couple generation gap at that point. But ultimately, I came to LA, which is where we originally intended to go. And I started working with an artist as a tour manager. And through that artist, this is kind of towards the launch of when everybody was really picking up on YouTube and that type of content. Spent time trying to figure out what type of content we would be creating for that artist. And through that process, really kind of reconciled and fell in love with the idea that there was a real power to sharing stories through the lens. And growing up Muslim American and post 9/11 America, that was something that was really meaningful for me. And through that process, I started working with a friend of mine who happened to be roommates with the artist that I was working with at the time. And we began by telling stories of individuals experiencing homelessness on Skid Row. We would just take a couple of DSLRs out and go and sit and talk with them and lend an ear and learn from them with the intention of hopefully turning these stories into something that would allow viewers to build some empathy for those who are experiencing homelessness as opposed to walking past them as a nuisance. That turned into a digital series that we did, documentary series called My Last Days, which was a documentary series about living told from the perspectives of those who were dying and had terminal prognoses. And the reality of those two projects, which we launched with a strategic partnership with our friends at Soul Pancake, Rainn Wilson's organization, just started catching fire and kind of breaking a lot of rules. That was at the time where, everything on the internet was 30 seconds to 2 minutes, and we were releasing these 20-minute long documentaries. And that kind of solidified our relationship with content creation. And then namely, there was a young man who had left a comment on one of our videos of that My Last Days series, basically stating that they had tried to take their lives recently for the 4th and 5th time. And after seeing one of these episodes, had recalibrated their value of life and decided they would no longer be trying to do that. And that cemented the fact that this was going to be a lifelong career for us. And we actually started our company on the heels of that comment. So
Wow.
starting an organization helps get your foot in the door because it's yours. But then at that point it was, we never had an ego about where things lived. It was always create things to meet an audience wherever they are. And so all of those projects then began to translate. My Last Days became a series that airs, I think we're in the 5th season now on the CW network. A couple of those stories inspired some other ideas for films that we did with a few studios around town.
Wow. So basically, there was no turning back. You started.
Yeah,
that's
it just
great.
caught and we went.
Okay, I love that. What a great. Okay, start your own organization. That's such a great bit of advice. That's so funny. Sorry, Denise, why don't you tell us how you got your foot in the door?
I was trying to think of where to start. The truth is, the gist of my story is actually pretty quick. I like to call myself, I'm a film baby. I'm a product of film school, to be honest. So I actually got started with being exposed to video production when I was a junior, senior in high school. And I grew up in Las Vegas, Nevada. So not too far from Hollywood, but far enough to where there was absolutely no industry pinpoints for me to understand what I was doing at that age. And so I decided to go to undergrad and go to film school to learn more about what it is that I was doing, just creating content in my high school. So on the way to, I ended up going to Brooklyn College in New York City.
Yay.
And yes, and on the way to New York, you know, I tell the story of how I was really insecure coming into my first day in my freshman year, because I just knew I was going to be around all these young Steven Spielbergs who knew Rosebud met. And I was like, I need to figure out what it is that I'm going to focus on. Everyone wants to be a writer and director. I just didn't know. And so I did a little bit of research in my freshman year. I was like, that's it, I'm going to be a producer. And it was really simple to make a declaration of that sort. But for me, it was really this idea of this position that just I fell in love with, that was a part of the process from beginning, middle, and end. And that really is what really excited me, is that it was both creative and business. And so, you know, I focused on that for the 4 years in undergrad at Brooklyn College. I had a bunch of internships, but ultimately I was like, this is it for me. And how do I go and get more experience in just producing to make me very confident in that position, and also to figure out my career. And so I ended up applying to grad school in Los Angeles and got into the American Film Institute, AFI's producing program. And I got in quite young. I went from undergrad to grad school immediately after. So I was 22 years old. I moved to LA. AFI turned out to be one of the best things that had happened to me, mostly because, you know, to be focused in a program that only does producing for 2.5 years, like you hate it or you love it, right? And I loved it. And I definitely ran with it. So the gist of my story is that upon graduating AFI, I decided that, you know, you essentially have two paths out of film school. You can go and get a job, you can go work your way up, or you can just go make stuff. And I ended up coming out of grad school at the time where digital was becoming a thing, similar to Ahmed's story. And I noticed a lot of my peers just going out and getting hired by all these digital companies to produce low budget content. They couldn't get a $30 million film producer to come do a $20,000 web series. So I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to take the shorter route here and just dive right in and start producing low budget content, then wait 20 years and work my way up the development chain and wait for someone to tell me that I can finally produce. And so that stroke of luck actually is how I met Issa Rae, my producing partner. She was looking for a producer for her web series at the time, Awkward Black Girl. We met 2 weeks before I literally graduated from the AFI. So it was right time, right place, you know, right opportunity that I was prepared for. And that was the beginning of our creative relationship, which has been 8 years now. And then I like to remind people that the first 4 years of that, her and I were just broke creators who were just doing a bunch of content for her channel. And I was also a freelance producer. I was being hired to produce music videos and other shorts and meet a lot of other filmmakers. And I continued that until Insecure got greenlit to pilot in 2015. And then from there, you know, we slowly started building an empire. Issa got her first HBO deal in 2016, and out of nowhere, she was like, "You're going to be on salary, and this is the job." And I was able to retire from freelancing. So the last 4 years of my life has been focused on developing for the company, while also launching a separate company her and I started, Color Creative. That was an initiative in its origin in 2014, and now this year we just relaunched it as a management company.
Oh, that's great.
So,
Okay. So I have a quick
yeah.
question for you, because you went to 2 schools that focus on film, one for
Mhm.
grad, so that was and then Brooklyn. Do you keep in touch with any of your alumni from the school? Any of the
all the time, especially AFI, but definitely still Brooklyn College as well. And you know, the thing that I realized that film school best gives you outside of the education and the hands-on experience is the relationships, is the networking part early on, where you're meeting so many like-minded individuals who are honestly quite starting off at the same level as you. And a lot of the work I first got coming at AFI in the freelance capacity was from my peers. They were the ones getting hired and would bring me onto their jobs. And so I'm still very much close to quite a few people. And we still try to collaborate to this day, which I think is awesome.
I think it's easy to forget that you have a posse when you are in school, whether you're studying, you know, underwater basket weaving or producing, you still have a posse, and it's so easy to forget to rely on your posse. So nicely done.
So sure. Thank you.
Kay, and then we'll talk a little more about the opportunities, but let me ask Kay, how did you get your foot in the door?
So the short answer is
No, tell us it all.
no. The short answer is I looked at the people who were doing the kind of work I wanted to do, who had the jobs that I wanted to grow into. and I did my research and I figured out what I could do to solve their problems that I could solve, or to contribute to their team. And that's how I got in the door the first time, because who doesn't want problems solved? And that particular job was at PBS, and it was a very high-end social justice news magazine, which was terrific because it happened to be an opportunity where we did 80 different stories all over the country. It allowed me to grow my community. And a couple of decades later, I still approach things that way, potential producing partners, potential teams, as what are they going to bring to the table that will add to what we're doing? What problems do I need solved? What challenges? Who can help me do that? And grow my community. So that's the general. The specific is it was PBS. And I was there for about 4 years and did about 24 different kinds of projects with the same revolving team.
And
And
how did you find PBS? Like, how did you actually,
right. So I talked to all the people who I thought were really smart and knew good people, even if they weren't in the business, and said, this is what I want to do. And every time they said, oh, you really ought to see this or go there, or I did it. That was my job. My job was to carve my own path, because it's not like medical school where you take a certain number of classes, you do your residency, and you're going to be a doctor at the end. With producing, you find your intention with joy and perseverance and integrity, and you just keep moving. What do you do that day? And it's also important to remember that your mentors don't have to look like you to help you. And as we move up the ladder, I like to also remember that people who don't look like me or have my experience can actually help me be a better storyteller and collaborator.
And what do you do to actually, so you've got yourself through the door, what are you doing to stay there?
So I made a deal with this guy. I had already been professionally producing theater in New York, founding a couple of companies, raising quite a lot for tours. So I wasn't a kid, but I didn't know anything about TV. But I knew how to be an adult and a professional and lead teams. And I made a deal with the EP that I wanted to be in the room, because I wanted to learn what he was doing. And I wasn't a threat to him because he was light years ahead of me at that point. And so I did what he needed me to do, but I also was in the room, and that let me understand what more I could do to support his team. And so I moved very quickly. Within 6 weeks, I was already an associate producer. And within a couple of months, I was probably the second senior person on the show, because I wasn't afraid to ask questions when I didn't understand something. And I never left the room without knowing what he needed, so that I could go do that and then some. So it's that joke we say about the coffee, you know, that one where they tell the PA, go get coffee, and you come back with cappuccino. And that's how you get noticed, because you get what they need, and then you give it something a little bit more.
Got it. It's true. That's absolutely true. You're right. Thank you for that, Sam.
I love coffee. So.
By the way, anyone who brings me cappuccino, they're in.
You see, it works.
You're right. Wait, Sam, we have one more. Sam, let me get to you for a quick second. Tell us how you started. Like, how did you get your foot in the door?
I mean, when you first asked this question, it was how do you get your foot in the industry? And the first thing that came to mind was I didn't even understand that filmmaking was like called the industry, until like 4 years ago when I moved to LA and I learned words like sizzle reel, and things like that. As a New York, very scrappy indie filmmaker, those were just not, the path didn't exist, you just made work. So I just, when I don't know, like early 2000s, when I knew that this is what I wanted to do, I just started making the work and building community around the work and working on anyone's films that I was interested in. That when I'm talking to younger people about, when they're like, what should I do? How do I do it? It's all about, like, I think someone else mentioned this. It's like finding your people, right? Finding the people, helping them bring their ideas to light. And then, you building that trust. And, producers, I'm director producer, so it's a very different like lens, I'm more of a director and I just produce because I've had to, over these years. I would, and that being said, I want to work with, what's that?
We're going to get to that you just said, and I just produce. We're going to get to that.
Well, it's like,
yeah.
I mean, when I'm listening to these three talk, I'm like, I want to work with each of you, please, 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 like, I don't like, yeah, I mean, I'm a director and but you have to produce when you, I mean, it's also, on one hand, it's like I kicked my way in, I fought my way in, I scratched my way in with my white privilege, with my education, with my middle-class background, but being queer, trans, Jewish, all these things that I internalized to make me very insecure and not want to work with other people, right? Like I would show up and work with other people and feel so alienated or uncomfortable, and I would leave a lot of those projects, right? And maybe that speaks to like the sensitive director side of me, but that was kind of my trajectory, is I would try to be part of what seemed like the bigger picture and just didn't feel welcoming to me for whatever reason. And so I just kept going back to my own projects and making them. And then, it's 20 years in and you connect to people. And then by the time I was making Disclosure, I moved to LA, not for the industry, but for like farmers markets year round, and like no more winter. And it just so happened that it really aligned with the project I was working on. And again, just having a very clear vision of what I was going to do and knowing that I could make it no matter what, right? Knowing I'd already made 3 films or 2 films at that point that I brought to completion. So I knew that I could make this no matter what. I did have higher, bigger aspirations if we could raise the money and build the team that I wanted. And so I think that's also sort of having that confidence at this point, that knowing no matter what it was going to get made. I think that really helped, get into the industry at this point. But also like when I think of like breaking into the industry, for me, it's like, what, 3 months ago, like when Disclosure launched on Netflix. So, but then of course it's like, that's on the tails of, 17 years of working. So
which nobody ever remembers. Like, you see the headlines in the paper and, oh, I got this great deal, but nobody sees, but they lived in their parents' basement for 4 years or they struggled for 10. So I love that because, whatever, it's not about me. So hold on, here's a quick question, because you're a director and a producer, and I'd love to know how you find the balance between the creative and the business. Do you literally just, I'm only directing today, or today I'm only producing? How do you find that balance?
Gosh, I would love to ask you that question as advice. Like, tell me how to find the balance. It's so hard. I think
You're doing it.
I think there were times, I had a co-producer, and there were times that I had to say, I'm not, on Tuesday, Thursday, I'm only thinking of like the creative stuff, and I need that space. And so I think over the years I did develop that boundary, but then of course it gets so blurred, depending on what's happening. And I also just know what each of those roles do for me. But I think as director producer, I can't separate the two, in the same way that like I came from editing, right? So I know to shoot, to edit, and ask my questions for the editing, right? So it's all so enmeshed. But in terms of like emotionally, the balance, it's really what's most needed at the time.
Yeah.
So it's like, as we were getting closer to doing our shoots, that's when I would be like, I gotta stop the producing stuff. Like, this is on your plate, get the help you need, and I need to focus on the creative. But I do like producing. I love Excel sheets. I love.
Hey, there's more to it than Excel spreadsheets.
I mean, there's a lot of Excel spreadsheets.
Yes, there is. But
there's tabs within the sheets. I mean, it's pretty fancy. You can link to things. It's like,
I don't do the
a lot.
But that's really, I mean, and we'll all get to that for everybody here, because I feel like everybody on this panel has to find that balance. So, you're in the middle of Disclosure, we'll talk about, because that's just beyond. It was so, thank you. It was so great. So you're working, you're doing whatever it is that you do, and then you get a phone call. Hello, it's your beloved aunt that says, hello, darling, I haven't seen you in 3 months. You're coming to my apartment tomorrow. Then what do you do? Like, how do you balance the personal with the creative and the business at the same time?
You're asking me?
Yes.
Ooh, you're
Oh, you
asking the
started.
wrong person. Oh man,
You're
I
in,
mean,
you're all in. If once you start rolling, there's nothing else that happens.
the joy of life for me is when I can take nights and weekends off. That's like, wow.
Mm.
And then that's like, wow, 2 days off in a row. You're just like, that's like a vacation. So that's the answer to your question. Like,
Okay. All
yeah,
right. Yeah, the balance is the hardest thing. So Denise, let me ask you a question. We talked about how you got your foot in the door. We talked about how you stay in the door and the great things that you're doing. So, and actually, this is a loaded question, and I shouldn't start with you. Sorry, I'm going to go back to Kay, and then Denise, you're going to see why. Because you told us how you got through the door, how you stayed in the door. So, what are you doing to give opportunities to others? How does that? Because you're an independent, you're a freelancer. Everyone on this panel, even though some of us are salaried, you're still a freelancer. So then how do you give opportunities to others?
Right. So because I'm a nonfiction producer, I'm at the top of my food chain, because the nonfiction producer is often the director, the writer, the hirer. It is to my benefit to have stories that are extraordinary, that take people places they can't go on their own. To accomplish that, I need people who see things or have experiences that are different than my own, so that the stories we tell are remarkable. The more deeply personal and specific the stories I create are, the more universal they are, because in the end, we're all human. And so this is a great time to be a creative storyteller, because there seems to be hopefully a heartfelt, but at least a surface interest in hearing different stories than we've heard before. And diversity is important as a creative person, not because of what we look like or how we identify, although that's part of our different experience. What we're really hungry for is the truth of the breadth of your experience and the depth of your character. And there's no one like you, and that's your power. And so it's smart business for me. And it also helps me as a person, because the work that I do and the person I am are the same thing. It helps me to welcome more people to my table. And I have to do things outside my comfort zone to do it. And one of the exciting things about this festival is I'm meeting lots of people I've never met before. And
I love that.
That's great. That's the short answer.
Okay, I like that. That's good. So here's a question. Thank you. Well, we're all going to get to that, because I'd love to hear how each of you who are so, accomplished and working, like here's the key, you're all working professionals, what you're doing for opportunities. But I also want to talk a little about your inspiration and your day-to-day. So Denise, I'll get back to you, because Color Creative, which is amazing, and I can't believe you guys are shifting to management now. I'm very excited about that. But you guys have a film in the festival this year. Yay. Dark City, Beneath
Yes.
the Sea. I love it. And it's a doc focused on Baltimore club music. And I worked on The Wire, so I spent many nights in the Baltimore scene. Don't even ask, it's a long story. But you're also the supervising producer on the fantastic dramedy Insecure, which we mentioned. So how do you go to this doc, Baltimore club music? Like, how did that fall into your lap, and when? Like, at what process did it come to you?
Yeah, I'm going to do all the connection points of what you literally just said here, because so TT, the artist, who is the director and one of the producers of the doc, she also edited it, is actually a client of ours with Color Creative, one of our first ones. But the doc came to us by her before she became an official client. And essentially how it happened is that we have, since the first season of Insecure, Issa and I have done, like, I call it an informal shadowing program for the show for directors, because it initially wasn't sanctioned by HBO, and then they found out we were doing it, and then they sanctioned it. And so it's a shadowing program that we have full control of. We select, or actually I gather a bunch of names throughout the year and talk to them, talk to Issa and the EPs, and help select. Usually if we're doing 8 episodes, we'll do 6 out of the 8. If it's 10, we'll do 8 out of the 10. But we'll select up and coming directors to come and shadow an entire episode with us. And they don't just come to set, they actually come in and shadow the entire week of pre-production, and they shadow the week of shooting for the episode, because it's important for them to see, you know, the prep experience and how it all comes together. So so to set that up, TT actually, her music had been featured on our show from season 1. We like to highlight, you know, independent artists, and she's a rapper producer. That's her first career lane. And so we were already familiar with who she was. And actually it was Prentice Penny, our showrunner, who knew that TT was a director somehow. He had reached out to her, you know, in between seasons, and so had asked me if we could put her on the list to shadow the new season of season 4. And so that's how I met her. And through her shadowing, I'm a prep and producer on our show. So I spent a lot of time on all the scouts and all the prep meetings. I got to know her over that little bit of time, and we started talking, and I was like, didn't know you are a director. What are the things you've been doing? Like, and she talked to me about this doc that she had spent 7 years making off and on through a small grant that she got. And I asked to see it. And actually, I lied. I didn't ask to see it. I was very nosy, and I Googled anything I could about it. And I found a trailer that was out there, because I think I was waiting for her to send the link. And so I just became overeager, and I was like, I have to find something on this because it sounded so cool. And so I found this trailer and just blew my mind. If you've seen the trailer, it's already just like, it's stunning because it's so visually well done. And it is like a hybrid music video, but slash, you know, social impact kind of doc. And, you know, when I saw her a few days later on set, I was like, we have to talk about this documentary. What are you doing with it? And she had just finished picture locking the edit, and was like, I want to do festivals, but I've exhausted my budget. And I kind of don't know really what happens from here. She had just moved to LA, particularly to pursue her career in filmmaking. So at the same time, we were already putting together the management company. We actually soft launched it last October. So by default, kind of after we had saw the full length documentary, we said, you know, a couple things. We would love to represent you as you know, a filmmaker. You are the perfect type of person that we are looking in terms of our clients and focusing on emerging filmmakers and writers. And then 2, we would love to come in and help produce and finish this documentary for you. And we paid for posts and the festival submissions, and you know, used our muscle at ETA and really stepped in and helped support her, and was able to get it in. It actually had its premiere at South by Southwest, which was very underwhelming, just because obviously, as we all know, the COVID really affected that this year. And so we had all these amazing things lined up. But from there, she was still, you know, the South by Southwest placement, and getting into several festivals throughout COVID. And now we are in talks in licensing the film for next year, which is very exciting. It's just one of those beautiful stories that I like to tell, because, you know, I give credit where it's due. TT did so much work in that doc, and all we really did was like, all right, we're going to help you, you know, go through the process of how to finish this and how to submit it and get people to see it. And she just actually got into the Powder Cake Fuse program with Paul Feig as one of the directors this fall. And so again, just as someone I'm so excited about, and this film, you know, touches everything that I think speaks to what Issa and I believe in, which is, you talk about opportunities. Sometimes, you know, people just need that support, right? And I think we have a responsibility at our level in the industry to actually find how we can open doors for others, because you realize we as producers are in a position of power to a degree, right? There may be barriers to our power, but we are in the position to say, I see you, I want to help produce this work, you know, whether or not you've done it before. And I think that is how you build the next wave of talent.
Absolutely. You know, and we're going to talk about this because it is a huge responsibility. As producers, we all play a part in telling stories that can affect change, right? Whether it's protecting the planet, sustainability, or addressing the cultural and political crises that are rampant in this country, or, as Kay said, presenting screen images and stories that truly represent the world in which we live. And that's a huge responsibility. So the question then, because it's a big shift, right? Producers now have to really, more than ever, producers and storytellers have to think and be conscious of the cultural impact of their, I mean, Ahmed, you started with a nonfiction series on homeless, and that was your spark. You had a camera, so you saw a need and you went and did it. And I feel like today, and I want you all to address this, producers now have to shift, because if we're not talking culturally or politically, or if we're not talking about the issues that we're all living today, there's a culture out there that doesn't want to see our work. So let's start, Ahmed, because you started. Let's do this in a lightning round, because we're running out of time, so everybody could get a chance to speak. Talk to me about the cultural impact that stories should tell, do tell. How does that affect you in the work that you're doing?
Yeah, so really wonderful question. I would say that most importantly, I strongly believe that when we use the lens and storytelling to the best of its ability, it is a bridge builder of empathy. And the reality is that that's what we're lacking as a global society at the moment, is empathy, because without sincere understanding of what it's really about for each of us in our own life experiences, to be able to listen to those around us and really come from a perspective that recognizes that, one, we will never first-handedly be in each other's shoes, but two, can treat that walk in this life with dignity. I think it offers us an opportunity as producers to tell stories that will resonate from a lens that allows us to hopefully be a little better tomorrow with our neighbors, our friends, our brothers and our sisters. And the reality is that, for better or for worse, media today is sort of a prophetic opportunity for the masses to sort of figure out what do we like, because unfortunately maybe we're not reading as much as we should be. And so, be that as it may, I think there is a responsibility, because especially the younger generation and those who are constantly trying to make stuff and want to become content creators, we often hear this phrase. I remember hearing this. I went to Columbia in Chicago for film school, and I remember hearing this phrase about creating art for the sake of art, and that kind of concept, which is beautiful, but also a little bit self-serving, as opposed to really being of service. And I think that's the distinction that we need to make as filmmakers and storytellers.
That makes sense. So thank you. Sam, let's talk about that shift as a producer and a director, that cultural shift in your role. How has it affected you?
Well, I kind of wanted to circle back to your question about paying it forward, right? Bringing in people on your crew. In disclosure, we prioritized hiring trans people. And when we couldn't hire a trans person, we mentored a trans person. And this was, from the beginning. So before we had any money. And it was so essential, not only because, trans people are disproportionately underemployed, right? So I wanted to give people a foot in the door and get people experience, but also just the story, I think, was Kay was talking about earlier, about how, having your mind on bringing people into the room affected her personally as well. Like this, it made the film better, right? Like the people who, who's a better expert on a life than the one who's living it, right? So having trans people behind the scenes was just as essential as only interviewing trans people in front of the camera. The mentorship program was incredible. And that's kind of the invisible work that, people who watch the film don't know about, but it's what I'm most proud of, because now we've got dozens of young trans filmmakers who have their films screening across the country because of the connections they made on set and what they learned and the confidence they also built just living with their lives being centered, right, and respected and understood for that time in a community. And then even after one of our first shoots, one of the mentors, right, who considered herself an ally but had never worked on this content, never worked with trans people, she was so moved by her experience that she went back to IATSE, which is her union, which is the largest tech union in the world, and instituted the first trans sensitivity training, which then within a couple of weeks was done at over like 4 at that point, and that was 2 years ago. So within like the first month of our first shoot, 50,000 people had been trained, and that's something, that's, to me, that's just as important as the film itself. And that, So you just don't know the domino effect you have when you do open the door. And it's not just open the door, but like get people in the room, and pay them. We paid, and all of our
Thank you.
fellows were
I love
paid.
that. Thank you.
And that's so essential. Like the unpaid intern is like, that is only available to very few people,
I love that.
and that just perpetuates who's allowed in the room and who's not. So part of the fundraising as a producer, it was essential for me to always have that in our budget. Like there was no cutting that area. Like that was always, that there would always be an honorarium,
That's so
for
great.
and
So few people
living
remember
wage,
that.
like
Yeah,
living
so few
wages.
people
So
remember that. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. We're running out of time. So I want all the panelists to know that I'm going to come back to each one of you and give you 30 seconds. It's going to be another lightning round. I have a timer. To just impart, because and the reason I'm doing this is I want to get to some of these questions. So I'm going to give you guys 30 seconds at the very end to just give us your best words of wisdom, guidance, advice to a new producer. Okay, and a new producer could be me, because each time you get a new show, you're a new producer. So that's what I'm going to give you soon. But let's get to some of these questions, and actually some of them I can answer. Mina Simone is talking about her documentary. It's Voices of Black Youth in Europe in 2017, and she wants to know. And I know this is a whole college course, the question that she's asking. So my nonfiction team, actually, each one of you could probably answer this. What kind of advice would you give about distribution? And she's a new director producer, and she's asking about her documentary distribution and giving the story to the world. So Ahmed, you want to start?
Yes, after I unmute myself. So I would say the number one thing for my philosophy with distribution is remove your ego from the process and remember the purpose of why you want to distribute your message. In fact, I was very fortunate to work on a documentary the past few years called Invisible Portraits that my friend Ogie directed, which is about the Black women's experience in America, historically told by Black women. And knowing her purpose, I think she ultimately ended up releasing it on Vimeo. And it's a beautiful film. It's feature length. She, had funding to do it properly. And is she was one of the producers on Loving many years ago, and is just an incredible storyteller. This was her debut as a director, and removing her ego, she wanted to make sure that the message could meet people where they were. So I would say start there, and then don't worry, because the people who need to see it will ultimately end up seeing it. And that will build you to where you need to be. Don't necessarily worry about making sure that you've already climbed Mount Everest on the very first one.
I love that. Okay, thank you. Anyone else jump in? Doc, distribution, go ahead, Kay.
I want to say to think about who your viewers are. And as comfortable and wonderful as it is to make stories for people who already agree with you and are like you and have experiences like you, and it feels warm and cozy, if your intention is really to shift the conversation, you need to speak, your work needs to speak up to people who don't necessarily feel comfortable with you and your stories. And that means you need to approach both your story subjects and your viewing audience with respect, finding the common ground, speaking to them with their values so that you can slowly humanize your story in their eyes. And what you'll find is if you approach them with love, which is really deep listening, you're changed by it, you grow, and they grow. And so when you're looking for distribution targets, don't rule out people that are easy to say, oh, they're crazy, they're nothing like us, we're never going to get that. You do yourself a disservice, and you do your team and your work and your story a disservice. Think about how to tell your story in a way that will be received and listened to by people you really want to know you and to see you.
So Kay, I'm going to jump in here for 1 second. I'm sorry, panelists. I'm going to pretend I'm a panelist for a second, because Mina, I'm finishing up a doc myself, and my background is usually narrative. So this is a whole new world for me. And I will tell you that what I've learned, and we're locked now, so I still have plenty of months ahead of me. The relationships of your distributors has to start now. So you need to be reaching out and making those phone calls, just introducing yourself. Do not bore people with a 3-page email. People hate that. It's a little, hey, can I give you a buzz? I'm working on Black youth in Europe. It's pretty fantastic. Just want to introduce the project to you. You're not ready to send it to people because it's not done, but you have to start those relationships now. It's like getting distribution. It's like finding a job. You would not take a job interview. So why are you not meeting these distributors? This could go on a lot longer, but that's kind of my, like Denise is cracking up because it's true, right? It's all about the relationships, no matter what you're doing. So that's kind of the short answer for you're welcome. By the way, you're welcome. So here's another question, and I can also talk to this one because my background is more episodic narrative, but I won't. Shadowing. So Denise, you guys have a shadow program. HBO has a shadow program. CBS has a shadow program. NBC has a shadow program. How do people understand how to get into these programs?
Yeah, I mean, look,
Wait, I'm sorry. Does everybody understand what a shadow program is in the world of narrative? If you are a director, and you have to actually be a director and not have aspirations to be a director. You have to have done something. You are invited to stand on a set and shadow the director from prep through shooting in the hopes of maybe getting an episode down the road. So that's a shadow program. Go.
No, thank you for that. Yeah, think of it as like an observational experience at the end of the day. But so the studio programs that exist, I think a lot of you guys can find them because they're all online. All the applications are available. And then within the studios, and as much as we all know you can apply, let's talk about relationships again, right? Because that's where it all starts. And even if you were to ask me, well, how do we get into your show's shadowing experience? It's the relationships, it's the people that I have met or I've come across or that has been sent to me from other colleagues that I trust who know that this is what we do and also who know that we identify and spotlight up and coming talent. And so it really is just kind of who is in, not within my own network as much as it's within, I think, the network at large. And I know it sounds like a chicken and the egg situation where you're like, well, how do I network and how do I get people to know me to get those opportunities? And I think it all comes in a relative amount of time by doing the work at the end of the day, right? I can't help you if you come to me and like Dana said, you haven't directed before, right? I'm looking for the people who put in the work, who have crawled up the ladder and they're just waiting for that next opportunity, that next door to open to get to the next level or to get more exposure or to meet more people. And I think, I'm only one touchstone as a part of someone's journey. And a lot of times, we're not going to be the change makers in your career, but we will be the ones that are advocates and are helping you along the way. And so, network as much as you can, get to know people who run these programs. They're out here all the time speaking on other panels and doing events, but then also get to know the alumni who've been through the programs and do your homework there as well, because you just don't know who you're going to meet, who can make that connection, who can make that introduction. And that's how you get seen and get looked at for these specific opportunities. Unfortunately, there's no magic formula. So there's no one right or wrong way, but I would just say do the work and do the homework.
Right. Wow. Okay. This is the responsibility of being the moderator. I have to stop us. So, but Denise just said, key, do the work, relationships. There is no ladder. You are all on your own. It's a fabulous industry. I encourage you to figure out how to get in there. So we're done, but we're not going to say goodbye. We're going to start with Ahmed. You have 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Best piece of advice you can offer a nonfiction person starting out.
Best piece of advice, make friends with everybody, because mostly everybody, it can in some way help. And when you do it with community that actually wants to support, it's a much better experience than someone who's just sort of having to do something to fulfill a function.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Kay, you've got 30 seconds. Go.
Every day, what are you going to do to move your work forward, to find the community that's going to feed you, hear you, see you, support you, and you're going to do it for them to change the world? Every day, what are you going to do?
Thank you. Awesome. Sam, 30 seconds. Go.
Oh God, don't take no for an answer. If you believe in your project, just don't take no. I can't tell you how many times we were told no. We were in conversations, like circling back to the distribution, we were in conversations and told no from Netflix for 3 years. So just keep going back. If you believe in your project, just don't. No is not a no. in this capacity,
Got
only in
it.
this capacity.
And Denise, you want to take 30 seconds?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something different. I would say always hone your craft and never stop creating. I think so many people do one short and they think that's it, and they've learned as much as they could, and that's honestly just not true. I think there's always room to grow, there's always room to learn, there's always room to get more experience. And so if you're a filmmaker, writer, producer, it doesn't matter, whatever kind of creator you are, keep creating, because the truth is you don't know which project it's going to be that will launch your career and that will put you in the next path. And so, just stay positive and know that no matter what, you're gaining the most fruitful experiences possible.
That's great. Thank you. So I will say that everybody took less than 30 seconds, so I can address one more question. Rose Fulani Bacon had a question about film school. So Denise, this is for you. What would you say is the most important skill to leave film school with?
Two birds with one stone. Relationships, right? You get to know all the peers and all the creatives you are in film school with, and identify the people that you would love to collaborate with for the rest of your career, to be honest, right? Like, know who those people are through film school that you want to be close to. And then the second thing to that is what I just mentioned, which is, to me, film school is the best place to hone your craft, to be honest, because you're in a bubble. It's safe. You're not out there launching your career and getting paid to create content yet. There's no pressure about like whether or not this short or this experience is going to be the thing that gets me jobs. I think a lot of people think of it in that context, but in my opinion, film school is the best place to bump your head, to fail, to figure it out, you're not sure if you're a comedy writer or a drama writer, do both, right? Like, it is the best place to work on your craft and meet other creatives. And hopefully when you come out of it, you know exactly who you are and the type of stories you want to tell.
That's great. That's great. So Bushwick Film Festival, the 13th annual, thank you for including us. This was an incredible experience. Panelists, you were fantastic. Kwebe, again, another fabulous year. We're going to have to say goodbye. Do we have to say goodbye? Is there going to be an adult that's going to tell us to say goodbye? I think.
Yes, I really don't want to say goodbye. I want you all to stay here with us
No.
for the rest of the day for eternity. Thank you all so much.